All right, here we go. So, I made a post a little while ago about minimum wage and how interesting and fascinating the tax act was for minimum wage. I still think that that is well played, and there's actually two pieces that come out and make it even more so. Basically, it's $12,000 is roughly the poverty line for a single member household, and 24,000 is thus the poverty line for U.S. four family household, or for family member household. So those being the two standard deductibles. Fascinating because it draws attention to those stats without actually like coming out and voicing those verbally. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about in this video is basically economics and how economics plays out, and then some of the ways that we've screwed it up over the last number of years. Additionally, how $15 minimum wage comes into question, as well as some of our decisions on healthcare. So I drew a really simple model. It's sort of a plane here, and so we have supply, demand, and then down here is tolerance. Okay, so in the center I drew sort of a triangle that aligns with that, and basically what I'm trying to show is that supply and demand are important, but if tolerance isn't there, or the ability to afford that piece, then really supply and demand don't matter. You don't have a good business model, right? So if you have a ton of supply, then that'll sort of pull these down, right? Because your tolerance doesn't really matter. Like how much you can charge for it goes down because you have to get rid of the supply. You've overproduced, and thus you rely on this income, or you go under. Same thing with demand. If you have way too much supply, then it pulls demand down. Now, eventually you can rebound and reestablish your business model or reforecast, but effectively that's what that does. It pulls it very sharply to one side. Same sort of thing with demand. If you have demand, it impacts the other sides, because a ton of demand, low supply, then you'll actually start pulling the tolerance up. People will pay more for your product in order to get it, and so the supply constraint will eventually fix itself over time, and you'll get back to sort of a normalized equilibrium between the three states. So why is this important? Well, I'll tell you that there was an event that happened in 1950 that started to change this paradigm, or rather started to adjust it. In 1950, there was a new thing that came out to the buyer's market, and it was known as the Diner Club card. What did the Diner Club card do? Well, it gave credit. What does credit do? Credit adjusts your tolerance, right? Because now when you go to the store, if you have $5 in cash, but you have a credit card that'll allow you to defer that payment until next month, your buying power, even if $5 is just your standard leftover money, right? Let's keep it simple. Standard leftover money per month, then that $5 this month and that $5 next month means that you have $10 in buying power. Stretch that over 3 months. Now all of a sudden you have 15, so on and so forth. 1958, there was another credit card that came out. I think this was the American Express. Okay, again, stretching that tolerance out. And so as tolerance increases, sometimes demand will increase, sometimes supply will increase, but your profits are increasing here. So better for business. And as it's better for business, eventually you'll start to outstretch these sorts of things as well. So credit allows a higher tolerance, or you to charge more for your product, because people now have the ability to pay more, right? So credit cards are an important distinction here. The second, and I didn't look up the date, but I should have, is welfare and social services. Those have been an advent of the, or an invention of the last 150 years, if memory serves me correct. And the same sort of thing. So if you look at your federal minimum wage, it's remained relatively static and since the 1950s. In fact, I got to be on a jury selection thing a couple weeks ago, and believe it or not, the amount of money you make in jury duty in King County is $10 per day, which hasn't been adjusted since 1958. Fascinating. So why does the minimum wage and why does welfare have anything to do? Well, welfare can add on top of your minimum wage if you're in the poverty limit, right? And so based on that, you're increasing the tolerance of how much somebody can spend on a given commodity. So milk prices can go up. So your meat prices can go up. So all those prices can go up. And now you're somewhat dependent on welfare, but it increases that buying power. And since the buying power went up, well, now you have a bigger audience for your demand, or access is the word I wrote under demand on here. And then, of course, you can increase supply. So as welfare increased that buying power, the other things started to grow as well. What does that mean, though? That means that people that are on welfare have higher buying power. People that have a credit card have higher buying power than someone with minimum wage with none of those options available. Okay. Basically, that comes back to the relative buying power is artificially increased for those members or groups within society, but people that's minimum wage is less. So now you have a couple personas that you're looking at on the split, right? And so you put minimum wage user, their tolerance remains relatively flat, supply, demand start to increase, right? So it's trying to drag that tolerance up. They don't make more, and so now relative to other people, it seems that their tolerance is lower. You put welfare at the top, or median income. Well, their tolerance is now higher, and thus it can drag these other two up. And because those are large portions of the population, in fact, I think the statistic is 12.3% of people are living in poverty currently. Because those are now higher, that also draws that cost up, or that relative tolerance for people in poverty, or people at minimum wage, whichever one you choose. So now they have to pay more relative to how much they make in order to maintain those same sorts of buying power. So if you take and increase minimum wage, then you've got a number of problems. One, the relative buying power of welfare goes down. So people that are relying on welfare or social services now require more money in order to get the same amount of goods for the cost or the tolerance that they have in their discretionary income. Second is that people that are not at that $15 minimum wage or not at that amount of money now view this this paradigm that's been proved. And there's this really great psychology video, right? And it's got two monkeys next to each other. And in the experiment, the monkeys have to go over, grab a rock, bring it to the scientist. When they do that, the scientist gives them a piece of cucumber. So the first monkey goes and does it, gets a cucumber. He's great. He eats a cucumber. Second monkey goes and does it. He gets a cucumber. That's the normal treat. And then the scientist does something different. They go and they give the first monkey, or get the first monkey to give him a rock. They give him a cucumber. The second monkey comes and gives him a rock, and they give him a grape. Now the first monkey looks at the second monkey, realizes that the second monkey got a grape for the same rock as the first, and he takes his cucumber and he throws it at the scientist, and he goes over and he grabs another rock, brings it over, gives it to the scientist again, gets a cucumber. So what happened, right? But before, the reward of a cucumber was totally sufficient, but now when he compares himself to the person next to him, his reward isn't as good as that person, or his increase isn't as good as that person's increase, and thus he's frustrated and no longer happy. So taking and shifting people to a $15 minimum wage, one, drives this tolerance thing all out of whack, and so now you have to renegotiate welfare, you have to renegotiate social services, and you have to figure out what their new tolerance or relative buying power is compared to the demographic that's only making minimum wage. Basically, you've just caused massive inflation just on that principle alone, right? The amount of tax dollars that have to go into it, the relative buying power goes down as the amount of money in the ecosystem goes up. It's just a bad model to begin with. Second is the people that were making minimum wage or less now look at the people who are making minimum wage and they say, wait a minute, why am I working so hard, or why am I working my ass off, or why have I been in this career for X amount of years, and all of a sudden somebody can start out at McDonald's and make the same amount of money as me or relatively close to it. Why didn't I get that same increase of 2x of my salary or my take-home pay? And I don't think anyone can explain that. Now I get it. You're gonna say livable wage and all these emotionally weighted words, but the functional limitations just don't allow that, right? There isn't a tolerance in the marketplace to say everyone gets to double their salary and keep their same jobs and the same businesses can stay open. It doesn't make any sense. And the last one I wanted to call out is healthcare, right? The same sort of thing happened in healthcare. Basically what happened is supply and demand wouldn't have changed, but supply and access did. So now everyone has access, which means everyone gets in this loop. The difference is that even though your buying power didn't go up, one person can't all of a sudden afford $12,000 ambulance rides that they do these days, but insurance can. So because it's adding a credit on top, the tolerance went up. And basically then you just watch it crescendo down or crescendo grows. You watch it go down the pipeline, right? So it starts out and insurance companies say, well, I know that tolerance went up because people have to do it. And so since everyone has to buy insurance or they have to face the repercussions and cost and all that, now I can start charging more, at least more than whatever the individual mandate was, right? So they start charging more. Now, hospitals look at your amount of tolerance and they say, well, you can only afford $100 or $150. Let me come back to that. But I know that insurance can afford $10,000. And so what did we get? We got the Martin Shkreli increasing a drug from $35 a pill to $12,000 a pill. Guess what? Insurance still had to pay it, right? Because they're required to in this new forced access policy. And so what did I mention? I mentioned that I would come back to I thought it was tolerance. Yeah, I don't fucking remember. Anyway, the point is, if you add an artificial credit line to people, then they can functionally afford more, right? And if they can functionally afford more, then people can charge more. And so if the insurance companies can charge more, then the doctors can charge more, then the hospitals can charge more, the nurses can charge more, the facilities can cost more, and thus you start to grow and grow and grow. So the fact that many people's insurance doubled over the last couple of years of the Affordable Care Act should be of no surprise to anybody, because we basically locked in that the access was required, and thus your pool grows. And as your pool grows, your tolerance grows, and your supply doesn't necessarily have to, because you're maximizing profitability, not necessarily making a sustainable business model. Yeah, so the point is, credit's kind of bad. Moving to $15 minimum wage doesn't help us at all. In fact, it just exacerbates the problem and misses the whole premise. And a free market relies on that balance between the three sort of paradigms. I think that's all I have to say right now. At least all I can think of. Next time I should take better notes. Thanks for watching.